Thank you for joining us at ChristianPhotoshops.com. Today we're going to be doing a Photoshop tutorial, and this one is going to be based on the Bible verse Luke 1:37, and that says that for with God nothing shall be impossible. And this also mirrors the Bible verse Philippians 4:13, which says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And so we're going to call this Photoshop we're going to call it Nothing is Impossible with God. And what we're going to do is we're going to have kind of a word art. We're going to have nothing is, then we're going to have the word impossible, and then at the bottom right we're going to have with God. So it's going to say nothing is impossible with God, and the impossible part is going to be destroyed essentially. We're going to pretend that this is a sheet of paper, and the the paper is going to be torn from the bottom at the word impossible. So the page is actually going to tear where the word impossible is. So we'll have nothing is impossible with God, but the word impossible is going to be torn. And this is really easy to do in Photoshop. Just a couple quick tools and then we'll be done. So let's go ahead and get started with it. Alright, the first thing we want to do is change our background color. The default is white, and we do not want white. So let's go ahead, and what we're going to do is just kind of get a light gray. Any type of light gray, not dark gray, not medium gray, not black, but just kind of just a light gray. And then fill your background. So now we have a gray background. Go ahead and create a new layer on top of that, and we're going to rename this one to paper. So our paper color is actually going to be a little bit lighter. Change your color. Don't change it to white necessarily. Just go maybe a couple ticks above white. So just a really light gray. Lighter than the color on your background, but not a white. Just go ahead and fill that. Alright, so now we have our paper layer, which is white, and we have our background layer, which is a little bit darker gray. Alright, create a new layer on top of that, and we're going to go ahead and start putting our text in. And make sure your color is at black, and we'll go ahead and write nothing is. We'll do this all in lowercase. And I'm going to change the font. Use Georgia. Georgia is the font I'm going to use. Go ahead and resize that a little bit, maybe about like that. Then we're going to write the word impossible in lower case. I'm going to change the color just so we put a little bit more emphasis on it. I'm going to change it kind of to a burgundy color. That's good right there. And then we're going to make it a little bit bigger. Make sure it's centered. This is going to be our focal point for the entire Photoshop, so kind of make sure it's in the center. And a little bit smaller. Alright, and then we're going to do with God, and we'll go ahead and leave it like that. Go ahead and change it back to black. And then we're going to put this about right here. We can always move these later if we need to, but this is going to be our basis right here. Okay, that looks good right there. I'm going to go ahead and put nothing is and with God up there. I'm going to go ahead and just make those invisible right now. And so we have the word impossible. What we're going to do is we're going to tear the paper off. So the paper is going to be breaking through from the bottom, and it's going to tear right through the word impossible. Now how we're going to do that is go ahead and merge the word impossible with your paper layer. So just control and click both layers, right click it, make sure your type is rasterized, right click it and do merge layers. Okay, so now we have one layer. Paper and impossible are merged together, and we're going to go ahead and rename that back to paper again. Alright, so this is our paper that's going to get destroyed. What we're going to do is create boxes where we're going to get it destroyed. So with your paper layer selected, go ahead and make a box with your selection tool. Just use the the rectangular marquee tool. Pull it down. We're going to dissect it pretty much right in the center of the word, which looks like it's going to be on that S right there. Okay, you got it selected. Go ahead and cut that out, and the way you do that is do Control X. That gets rid of it, but we need to paste it right back. So do Control Shift V, and there it's back. So now we have two layers. I'm going to rename this one just rename it to upper right. Upper left. Okay, go ahead and turn that visibility off. Go back to your paper layer, and now we're going to do the same thing with the top right part of it. So go ahead and select that. Control X to cut it, then Control Shift V to paste it right back. And then we'll call this one upper right. Go ahead and get rid of your visibility. All right, go back to your paper layer again. And then we're going to cut at right about there. Go ahead and Control X and then Control Shift V. We'll call this lower left. Go ahead and turn off your visibility. And then your last one is already a square. We have it named paper. We'll just rename it to lower right. Okay, so we've got 4 layers of our paper. There's all 4 layers right there. And now what we're going to do is we're going to tear the paper. So let's go ahead and start with the first one. This is our upper left, the very top part of Impossible on the left. And what we're going to do, actually let's go ahead and turn off the visibility for the rest of them so we can see what we're doing. We are going to use the Warp tool. Go to Edit, Transform, and then click on Warp. And if you've never used Warp, what it does, it gives you all these little points all over the image, and you can drag wherever you want and just distort the image. So you can just keep dragging, and it moves the image however you drag. So we're warping the image and just making a really weird shape out of it. So what we're going to do with the Warp tool is we're going to drag this corner right here, the bottom right, and we're going to pull it up kind of like that. We're not going to pull it that far, but what we're doing is we're pulling the paper. So pretend that the paper is torn from the bottom, and we're just going to pull it up like that. Now what I want to do is not pull it too far. I want to pull it maybe like that. Okay. Bring up your other portions, and you can see right there how the paper is kind of coming out right there. And what we're going to do is we're going to do that with all of them. And so what we could do is click on your next one, your upper right one, go to Edit, Transform, and Warp, and then just grab it and just pull it. And then you could do it to this one right down here. Edit, Transform, just grab it, pull it, and then do your last one. And then just grab it and pull it. And so very quickly right there we have the paper is kind of bursting forth right there, and we have a nice star shape. It looks like someone just punched right through the paper, and that's the image it created. And that looks fine. If you want to leave it like that, that's fine. But I think for this picture, since we're going to be doing a Christian theme, I want to change that shape. Instead of a star, like a perfect symmetrical star, I want to change it to more of a cross shape. So it'd be kind of lower at the bottom and shorter at the top and shorter on the sides. And so what we're going to do, you can leave it like this if you wanted to, but we're going to make it more of a cross shape. So what we want to do with that, I just did undo on all of that, and we're going to start fresh. Go ahead and click on your upper left one, which is the very first top one. And we're going to use the Warp tool just like we did earlier, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to use the rectangular marquee tool, and I'm going to draw a box around it right about there. And we can go ahead and bring up the other ones. And what I'm going to do when you have the box that small and then you go to edit, transform, and then warp, you're only going to warp a small part of it. So we want the top part, which is going to be the cross, we want that to be a little bit shorter than the bottom part. So let's go ahead and make a shorter warp. So we've got our small box right here, and we'll go ahead and warp it maybe like that. Okay, deselect. All right, that looks good right there. And then on our upper right one, we're going to do the exact same thing. Just draw a box, a small box. Doesn't have to be the same size as the other one, but we only want to warp a small part of that one. Go to edit, transform, and warp, and then pull it up again, just like that. You don't have to be symmetrical with the left side. A paper tear is not going to be symmetrical, so you don't have to do it like that. But about like that, I think would be fine. Okay. Now we got our bottom ones coming up, and since the cross is going to be a little bit longer on the bottom, we're going to make a little bit bigger box. Some more like that. Go to edit, transform, and warp. Take your top corner and just peel it down. Like that. And then go to your last one, your lower right one. Make another box, fairly large box. And then go to edit, transform, warp, and then pull that out just a little bit. All right. All right, go to select and deselect. So we have that right there. You can go and fine tune it. It's kind of a cross shape. You can go and fine tune it a little bit more. Maybe pull this in just a little bit. And then maybe down here, no, that's too much. And then maybe on the bottom, pull that down just a little bit so it goes down even lower. All right. Okay. So it's we've got the paper torn right there, and you can play around with it, and you can even like for example on some of the corners, what you could do is you could make a box around it. Zoom in a little bit. You can make a box around it, and you could warp it, and then you could curve it even more if you wanted to. You can actually curve it on top of itself like that, but we're going to leave the points in there. So I'm not going to mess with that anymore. But I think that looks fine like that. And now to make it more realistic, what we're going to have to do is paint some shadows on here. So to paint shadows, just go down to your background layer and then create a new layer on top of that and call it shadows. Get your brush tool, get a nice large soft brush, maybe like that. Change your flow pretty low, your opacity pretty low, and then just zoom in. And what you're going to do here is you're painting shadows on the paper or on the surface below the paper. And so what you're going to do is this is more of an art part of the Photoshop, but what you're going to do is just kind of paint some shadows where they would go. So right on the edge of the paper, they would cast a shadow from the light source, like that. They don't have to be very dark, but they do need to be seen. And then where the edges are very small, it would actually be a very dark shadow because very little light is getting in there. So that would be almost black right there. So make those pretty dark. But then when you get out closer to the center, it's going to be a little bit lighter of a shadow because there's more light getting in there. So the same thing down here. You can make it really dark at the thin parts and then not quite as dark towards the center. And this is more of an artistic part of the Photoshop, and you just have to play around with it. Make those darker. Make this dark up here. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. If you ever mess up and you draw a shadow right there and it shouldn't have went right there, all you got to do is make a mask and then just erase that. Just erase that thing that you messed up right there. So, I think that looks pretty good right there. We could spend a little bit more time on it, fine-tuning it, but for this tutorial, I think that looks good right there. And zoom out, see how we look. See, and if you take off your shadows, that's what it looks like if you add the shadows on. It looks much more realistic. It looks like it's actually coming off the paper, and the paper has more of a 3D look to it. So just a little bit of shadow, and that's what will happen. Alright, so let's zoom out. Let's go and put our text back on there. So we have nothing is and with God. So we have nothing is impossible with God. We have somewhat of a cross shape coming out of the word impossible. I want to move and resize this just a little bit. Put that right there. I'm going to put with God right there. And just a little bit more fine tuning on the shadows. Alright, and we can call that a finished Photoshop right there. A couple other things you could do if you wanted to add like a paper texture, go crumble up a sheet of paper and then uncrumble it and take a picture of it. And then what you could do is use that for your texture here. And so what you would want to do for that is you want to put all of your paper layers together where we messed up the word impossible. Just go ahead and merge all those together. And then put your paper texture right on top of that. And you can kind of move it around so it fits the paper a little bit better. And then just go to your blending mode right here and change it to multiply. And then do Control-Alt-G. And that's a little too dark. So what we're going to do is we're going to lower the opacity just a little bit. Maybe like 30-40% for this picture. Your picture may be different, but for this one. And now we have a paper texture. Nothing is impossible with God. Impossible is torn. And so I think this is the final. And I hope you enjoyed this Photoshop tutorial. I hope you learned something today. And if you get a chance, try these couple tricks out. Play around with the warp tool. There's a lot of things you can do with the warp tool other than just breaking paper. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions about this Photoshop or any other Photoshops, just contact me. My information is on christianphotoshops.com. Again, I appreciate you coming out, and check back later for new tutorials. Thanks.